Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking you on an incredible journey. We're heading to the Seychelles archipelago.
Hmm.
And this place, it isn't just beautiful, It's a living testament, really, to how geology, global powers, diverse cultures, how they all converge.
Yeah, they create something, well, truly unique.
Exactly. We've waded through a stack of sources for you, and our mission, like always, is to pull out the most important stuff, the surprising facts, give you that shortcut.
Get you well informed without the information overload.
Right.
And it really is a captivating subject. Seychelles, I mean, it's far more than just a picture-perfect postcard destination.
Definitely.
It's strategically important, a real jewel. And it has this complex tapestry of cultures, a history shaped by, well, everything from pirates, kind of elusive figures, right up to powerful colonial empires.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. First off, the geography.
Right.
Seychelles is this archipelago, 115 islands, and they're spread across this massive area, like 400,000 square kilometers.
Huge space.
Yeah, in the western Indian Ocean, sort of northeast of Madagascar, east of mainland Africa.
Mhm.
And when you look at them, you notice something, well, distinct. The biggest islands, that's Mahe, Praslin, and La Digue, they're these ancient, rugged, granitic things.
Yeah, totally different formation.
Totally. While the rest, they're mostly flat coral atolls.
And what's truly fascinating about those granitic islands,
Yeah.
it's their geological origin.
Go on.
They're actually a fragment, a piece of the African mainland that broke off maybe 10 million years ago.
Wow, 10 million.
Yeah. And this incredible isolation, geologically speaking, it explains why Seychelles has this really unique, distinct mix of plants and animals, stuff you just won't find anywhere else.
A living relic, almost.
Pretty much, yeah, the living relic.
That isolation, it must have really set the stage for a unique ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And this location being where it is, it quickly became a crucial maritime hub.
Makes sense.
Yeah, throughout the 19th century, Seychelles was this vital harbor, a roadstead,
Yeah.
a safe place for ships to anchor.
Like a protected bay.
Exactly. And a coaling station, too. Seychelles timber was apparently a big export for shipbuilding.
Oh, yeah?
We even found records like 16 oak buoys just called the Seychelles, used in St. Anne's Bay way back in 1871.
Huh. Specific detail.
Right. And by 1825, Mahe, the main island, was already densely planted. Coconut palms, oranges, sugar.
So early cultivation,
Right.
building on that, the natural beauty you see there today, it's intrinsically linked to its economy now.
How so?
Well, that early maritime importance kind of evolved, didn't it?
Right.
Now tourism is just absolutely
What do
vital.
you mean driver?
Pretty much. It's accessibility from Europe, Asia, Africa,
Mhm.
plus all the different places to stay. It really shows how they've, leveraged their natural gifts
Right.
and their understanding their need to protect their national treasures,
Right.
the wildlife, the underwater world, the coastlines. It's commendable, sure, but it's also essential for that tourism to keep going.
So it's kind of baked into their identity now.
Yeah, exactly. It's core.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like they were onto sustainability way before it became, a buzzword.
You could say that.
Today, Seychelles is definitely seen as this tropical paradise, famous for the stunning beauty, lush plants, white sandy beaches.
The whole package.
Yeah, home to about 95,000 people, average income around $16,900. And the society is known for being friendly, right? This Creole blend.
A real mix. French colonialists, African slaves, Chinese, Indians, others too.
And that commitment to nature, it's not just talk. They were apparently the first country to have a dedicated marine protected area.
It's pretty incredible, pioneering stuff.
It really is. And maybe as a sort of testament to how serene it is, here's a comforting fact.
Yeah.
The islands have apparently never been disturbed by an earthquake, cyclone, or tsunami.
Wow, lucky break geologically.
Right. So when you think about this mix, this natural resilience and all this human influence, what does that tell you? How did this paradise actually evolve?
Well, it tells us that from its earliest days, Seychelles was kind of destined to be a crossroads. Its history isn't just about someone discovering it. It's about layers and layers of human interaction shaping this, well, originally pristine environment.
Right.
Even the name Seychelles, it comes from Jean Moreau de Seychelles, the first French colonial official governor. That underscores that early European stamp.
But there are other names before that.
Oh, yeah. Before formal colonization, it had these intriguing older names like the Pepper Tree Isles, and Arabic names too, Tayaz or Sataya. Hints at even older connections, maybe less documented ones.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The first known inhabitants. They weren't explorers or settlers like you might think. They were pirates, buccaneers, 17th, 18th century.
Right, the sort of shadowy figures of the sea.
Exactly. Their visits were mostly undocumented, and Seychelles actually stayed a pirate haven until the late 1700s. That's when settlement started to, curb the piracy.
So that lack of early formal control made it attractive for them.
Seems like it. And this set the stage for this recurring back and forth, these power struggles for control between France and Britain.
The big players.
Yeah. French expeditions go back to 1736, but Britain eventually got definitive control in 1814.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, this constant shift, especially the French presence early on, it fundamentally shaped that Seychelles Creole society we mentioned.
How did that work?
Well, French settlers, they set up sugar plantations. And to work them, they brought in large numbers of Malabarans. That's an old term for people from India's Malabar coast.
Okay.
And African slaves, too. This created this really profound cultural fusion.
So the Creole identity grew out of that mix.
Precisely. The Creoles, they're the largest group today, often describe, characteristics like dark skin and artistic sort of temperament, and their famous fat food.
Fat food, what's that?
It's often used, maybe a bit colloquially, to describe their rich traditional cuisine. But the society prides itself on being friendly, which really speaks to how this blending worked over time.
Yeah, that blending sounds key. But there was a darker side to the colonial part too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are examples like Coatavie Island. It was apparently run like a convict colony or sweatshop for the Spice Islands before it went bankrupt. Grim stuff.
Grim. And you mentioned Indian immigration?
Right. The first main wave was late 1750s to 1780s. They also adopted that French plantation system.
Okay.
Then the abolition of slavery in 1831, that had a huge effect. It led to escaped slaves gathering, forming this new exotic Seychelles Creole culture. It even had influences from the Dutch in Ceylon, the Malay in Malaya.
Wow, so it was a real melting pot organically forming.
Very much so. But human arrival also brought really alarming environmental problems.
Such as?
While sources mention the near-total extinction of reds, likely a type of bird or animal on thieves' crests because of introduced pet snakes.
Oh, no.
And the giant tortoises, the Seychelles giant tortoises, nearly wiped out from the main islands. Fewer than 100 survived, mostly on Aldabra, Curieux, Saint-Pierre.
That's devastating.
Yeah. And at least 15 endemic bird species went extinct. One was wholly erased by introduced rats.
Rats, snakes, the usual suspects in island ecosystems.
Unfortunately, yes. So just think about the sheer impact those colonial shifts had on the landscape, on the original inhabitants, human and animal.
It's a powerful lesson in unintended consequences, isn't it?
Absolutely. And even when the British took control, they initially kept the French legal system, the French Code de loi, for administration for the courts.
Really? Even under British rule?
Yeah. And this sticking to French law, it naturally caused tension between the British residents and the settlers. It even led to the deposition, the removal of President Campbell in 1910.
Fascinating friction there.
But you still see the French legacy today, architecturally. The Church of St. Anne, St. Paul Cathedral, that famous clock tower in Victoria.
Like a little Big Ben.
That's the one. It anchors that layered history right in the present day, visibly.
That's a great point about the legacy, legal, and built. Change wasn't always immediate, even with new rulers. So, okay, let's pivot now. 20th century. Seychelles' journey towards self-determination.
Right.
World War II, that strategic location we talked about, made it an alluring target for bombardment.
Oh, wow. Did it get hit hard?
Mahe was bombed from the air. This actually led to the first Indian soldiers arriving, but despite the alarms, and yeah, some shells sank ships in the harbor, the bombardment had surprisingly little impact on the city itself.
Dodged a bullet there, relatively speaking.
It seems so. This era also saw growing unrest. Some accounts mention peasants massacred by the French planters, really stark language, and this growing awareness for independence, especially around World War I.
So the seeds were being sown early.
Yeah. Early political groups formed, but getting real representation was tough.
Yeah.
There was this system of communal representation which discriminated against blacks.
Institutional barriers.
Yeah, exactly. And the early 60s, things got rough. A massive campaign of intimidation against the left, mass arrests, detentions, violence.
So a really turbulent path towards independence.
Very much so. This raises a big question, right? How does a small nation navigate all that pressure, internal and external, while trying to govern itself?
It's a huge challenge. And that political evolution, from France, Albert René's time, often described as dictatorial power, 77 to 91,
Right.
to eventually getting back to multi-party rule, it shows just how challenging that path was. And while there are still concerns today about democratic practices,
Like what?
things like harassment of opposition activists, scrutiny of the press, and the intelligence agency having these wide interception and monitoring capabilities over communications.
So still ongoing issues.
Yes, but it's important to also acknowledge, despite these problems, Seychelles is still a functioning nation with the rule of law and democratic institutions. It's complex.
Okay, so the journey culminates June 29, 1976. Independence. Member of the British Commonwealth.
Milestone moment.
But even before independence, there was this polarization, ethnic lines being drawn. Sources suggest that Chinese took on many high offices and business functions, while the moderates, mostly French, felt like a repressed minority.
Pre-independence tensions shaping the new nation.
Seems like it. And while independence brought this huge tourism boom, really put Seychelles on the map as a prominent tourism destination.
The economic upside.
Yeah, but it wasn't all smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
This rapid growth, it's almost a cautionary tale, isn't it? How unchecked development can, well, erode things if you're not careful.
That's a critical point. You saw unregulated construction, luxury facilities directly at the beach in dangerous places, just built quickly.
Risky.
And economically, a big worry was capital flight. Foreign investors basically taking profits out, not enough benefits staying for the locals.
So the wealth wasn't shared properly.
Right. Leading to locals being deprived of parts of their land, less farming area, losing beach access.
Social consequences, too.
Big time. This huge influx of tourists, foreign population, it brought rising crime, drug abuse, prostitution, serious social shifts.
So beyond the politics and environment, they still face these big economic vulnerabilities because they rely so heavily on just two things, right?
Exactly. Tourism and fisheries. That's the bulk of it. So when global events hit like the Indian Ocean tsunami or rising oil and food prices since 2008, they feel it hard. Significant economic difficulties.
That vulnerability is striking. Especially for a place with so much natural abundance, it feels like a paradox. They have agreeable conditions for agriculture on Mahe, but they still import most basic foods.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
And it leads to high costs for local food, plus, national security worries about food supply.
So this knowledge society idea you mentioned, is that meant to tackle the food import issue, or is it about a different kind of resilience?
It's aimed more at broader long-term resilience, though import dependency is definitely part of the puzzle they need to solve. The knowledge society goal is about diversifying, upgrading the economy, moving beyond just tourism and fishing. It's a strategic shift.
Gotcha.
And maybe the most urgent threat, the one looming over everything, is climate change.
Right. Low-lying islands.
Yeah, exactly. Some are only a meter or two above sea level. The projections are stark. Major national economic losses, like a 5% GDP drop by 2050.
Wow.
Reduced fish catches, altered weather patterns. They're even seeing mosquitoes attacking agricultural areas that used to be safe because the climate is changing.
Just not just environmental, it's existential. Economically, socially.
Completely. It hits everything.
That's a heavy burden. But despite these hurdles, Seychelles is actively preserving its identity, right?
Okay.
And looking forward.
Very much so. Culturally, you have Seychelles Creole, or Seychellois. That's the main first language. French-based Creole, but it pulls in words from English, Arabic, African languages.
You're a real hybrid.
Yeah. It was standardized in writing in the 70s, and now it's flourishing in literature.
What about French and English?
French is still the second most widely spoken, and English kind of functions as a sociolinguistic lingua franca, meaning it's a common language used for communication between different groups, especially in like business or diplomacy, a bridging language.
Okay, makes sense.
And culturally, music and song are huge, the most widespread art form. You hear major African and French rhythms mixed together, often with rattling instruments, drums.
Oh, we stuff.
Definitely. And the national dance is the Sega. It actually has pre-French origins, but French influences too.
Interesting blend there as well.
Yeah, and it's not without discussion. There have been controversial questions of authenticity, ownership, and appropriation around how it's evolved.
The complexities of culture.
Always.
Yeah.
But it remains a really significant traditional rural dance. And visual arts are super diverse too.
Yeah.
Vividly colored wooden carvings, grand ceremonial sculpted pillars. Often art mixed with utility.
It really sounds like the Seychelles isn't just, reacting to problems. It's actively shaping its future, using its culture as part of that.
Absolutely. And beyond just cultural preservation, they're real leaders in environmental conservation.
We touched on the marine protected area.
Right. And there's extensive government legislation, public bodies like the Seychelles National Parks Authority, all dedicated to protecting the environment. They've got World Heritage Sites, Vallée de Mai, Aldabra Atoll, La Digue. They even set up a natural wealth trust to fund conservation.
Really putting their money where their mouth is.
Seems so. And tying back to what we discussed, they have these ambitious plans to become a knowledge society, leveraging the global digital shift.
The government thing.
Yeah, their digital economy and unique e-government paradigm are seen as success stories, a potential model for replicability in the global south.
Oh, interesting.
And this is backed up by developing their own tools, homegrown governance and planning instruments, like their development strategy framework for 2020-2030, tailored to the specific situation.
Smart, not just copying others.
Exactly. And internationally. They're balancing those old links with Britain and France, with new relationships, China, other Asian countries, trying to boost ties with developing states and, avoid just being a pawn for bigger powers.
That's a smart balancing act for a small nation. What an incredible journey we've covered. From ancient rocks and pirates, through all the colonial layers, the fight for independence, now to this vibrant culture facing really modern challenges.
It's a testament to resilience, adaptability, isn't it?
Truly is.
And maybe as we close out this deep dive, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider how Seychelles, this small island nation, so vulnerable to global forces like climate change, economic shifts, how it's actively using its unique position, its cultural resilience, that vision for a knowledge society, not just to survive, but maybe to become a model. Innovation, sustainable development in the 21st century. What can bigger nations actually learn from this archipelago's adaptability, its determination to chart its own course?
That is a powerful thought to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Seychelles' unique and really inspiring story.
Pleasure to discuss it.
We hope you feel a little more well-informed and maybe a lot more curious now.